Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. Today, I am really excited to interview one of my favorite people on the internet and one half of the Chief Chats podcast, candidate for Oklahoma State Chair, Kevin Hobbie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Sorry, I'm in my truck. I'm not in the Chief Chat studio. You caught me while I was at work, so just trying not to freeze to death out here.
Yeah, it is an interesting weather week. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm in New York, so I'm kind of used to this type of stuff. But even what we've been getting this week is ridiculous. New York City doesn't normally get this kind of snow. So
no, I don't think anybody has. So I'm in Montana right now for work, and about 3-4 days ago, I actually got like snowed in, physically couldn't get out. We got 17 inches, and the high for the week has been -17.
A high?
The highest that it's been, yeah. And today is the first day that it's supposed to get above -10. Yeah.
That is insane. Man, okay, yeah. I complain too much about upstate New York weather. That's a whole different level. No, thank you.
Upstate New York, though, that's so posh. Like it's so posh to just be able to complain about it. Like, oh man, it's so terrible living up here in upstate New York. You know,
right?
My gold shoes are too tight. And my wallet's too small for my 50s.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed it growing up, especially as a 10-year-old. Getting actually 4 feet of snow is awesome. Like snowbanks that are taller than you are the coolest thing as a kid. And then when you have to start shoveling them and like driving through them as an adult, it becomes significantly less fun really quickly.
Yeah. So I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma, and we would get like I remember one year it snowed 3.5 inches, and we shut down school for like 2 weeks. And I used to think it was so cool. And then I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and saw like real snow and all of that, and I was just like, oh man, this is not the life for me. It is. Yeah. It's like heroin, just a little bit goes a long ways.
Mm-hmm. And it's always there, even when you don't want it to be.
Yeah, for sure.
It never goes away. Well, so on the show, we're a big fan of origin stories. So I want to know who was the first libertarian that you listened to, and what was your initial reaction to what they were saying?
So the first one that I ever listened to, I don't know if you know this or not, but so I was actually a young communist, not a socialist, not anything like that. I was part of a young communist group on campus there at the University of Oklahoma. And the first one that I ever heard was Ron Paul. And I thought he was crazy. I thought it was the most insane thing I'd ever heard. And then I got out of college, started a business, started paying taxes, started doing all that fun stuff. And I started drifting more back towards kind of a capitalism thing. I liked making my money and I wanted to keep it, but I felt like everybody else should pay taxes and take care of everybody. So I was in this weird quasi state. And then I actually started following this guy named Libertarian in Chief, Todd Hagopian, and I really liked his tweets. He was in Ohio at the time, and I really started drifting more towards that libertarian type view. Then had some discussions with him. He was a businessman as well, and then when I came back to Oklahoma, I ended up at this point, I was an independent. I was no longer part of the Democratic Party, just because mainly economic issues, still very socially progressive and things like that. And Todd actually kind of pushed me into getting involved in the OKLP. And after that was pretty much it. I ran for vice chair a couple of months later, won that election, and had to step away from the party for a little bit. I had some work stuff that kind of took me away this last year. And now I'm back running for chair. Our current chair, Chad Williams, is not going to be seeking re-election. He won his city council race and just feels like he's better served there. And so I just decided to throw my name in the hat.
I like that. I also don't want to skip over the fact that your current chair isn't running again, because he actually won something. He got elected to a thing.
Hey, we've been winning a lot in Oklahoma. I don't know if you saw recently, but we got Chris Powell won his re-election for city council with 76% of the vote.
I did see that one. That one was exciting.
Yeah. So he actually came in on a special election last year, and we went out, campaigned for him. He ended up winning that. And then, he really just knocked it out of the park with this one. So we've had a couple of city councils, a couple of school boards. We've really been focusing on real small, as close to the individual as possible elections. Of course, we still have our big elections for just to keep ballot access and stuff like that. Todd got 300,000 and some change votes this year in Oklahoma when he's running for Corporation Commission, which extended our ballot access into the next 2 years. So we've really been focusing on those small, close to the individual as possible, but we've been winning quite a bit. So
that is really exciting and really encouraging. I think more states could follow that plan of focusing on local. I think most states are at this point, but it's kind of a slow trickle into, okay, governor is cool, but let's do something that you can actually talk to all of the voters in that constituency.
Right. So everybody wants to be the next Amash. That's what it is. Everybody thinks that they're the next Amash or going to be the first one, and we are winning some elections, nationwide. We recently won Congress there in Wyoming. There've been a couple state level Congress there in Wyoming. I agree with you on these smaller elections. I was not so much on board with that when I first came into the party. I thought, there's no reason why we shouldn't be challenging for these big seats. But then you kind of let the reality of campaigning and being a third party set in. Yep. And I think that focusing on those smaller local elections is definitely the way to go. People don't realize it, but their city council has more of an effect on their day-to-day lives than their local congressman.
Yeah.
And so whenever you can introduce those libertarian ideas on a very small level and show that they work and things like that, that can really change people's viewpoint on libertarians.
Yeah. I've always kind of questioned the authenticity of the viewpoint. I need to get the highest elected office possible so that I can control as much of the government as possible so that I can make sure that nobody's controlling the government. It's like,
right. Yeah,
that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that what you do see a lot is people that they may have good intentions, when it comes to that. I wouldn't say that everybody that runs for a big office like that, especially under our party, has the best intentions. A lot of them are, disenfranchised Republicans or Democrats that maybe couldn't win their primary, and they see the ability to utilize a smaller party as a vehicle to, kind of promote themselves, I guess. I think there's a lot of selfish people that run for that. I mean, you can run for any office and you're automatically blue check verified. So some people will just jump in strictly for that.
Yeah, I considered it. There was a part of me towards the end of 2020 where I was like, we all need to run for Congress in 22. Like, we all just need a paper candidate, whatever. Just like everybody in like some type of leadership in the LP needs to be running for their congressional seat next year, so we all get blue checks.
Right.
But, I wouldn't be opposed to a plan like that, though, where your leadership in the party are doing like some semi-paper candidacies for the kind of middle tier elections, really focusing on the local ones, and then you're running a Larry Sharp for governor or something like that, at the top of the ticket.
Right. Well, those big tickets, big tickets, they serve a purpose in mostly ballot access. That's one thing that
Right.
a lot of people don't understand is the ballot access laws and how those affect us. And so you've got to get these statewide. Most states require you to have these statewide wins or these statewide percentages in order to maintain your ballot access. But I agree with you. The smaller races are definitely, they're needed. Congressional and Senate races, especially if it is like in Oklahoma, we have a ton of unchallenged seats. So I had floated the idea of running for District 99 there in Oklahoma City against a incumbent, AJ Pittman. But when you look at like the stats and the money that you're going to spend, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because you're like, well, say you're going to spend $10,000 on a two-way congressional race, so you can get out there in front of the people and talk about it. Well, if you were to put that $10,000 towards 2 or 3 city council races, those are winning elections, and the more that you win, the more momentum you build. So you get kind of this snowball effect. But the big tickets, they definitely serve their purpose. Larry Sharp, love the guy, great friend of mine. He, when he got on the Joe Rogan show, it was a huge deal for libertarians. I mean, that was a massive, massive thing for us. And it just gets those ideas out there, because a lot of people, all they see is the bad.
Right.
We seem to only get bad press, the Naked Got convention and the couple of gaffes that Gary Johnson had and things like that. They make a lot more waves than any of the positive.
Yeah, I've definitely started to blame the media less for that, because as I get more involved with the Libertarian Party, what I'm seeing is that more often than not, it is other members of the party that are making these gaffes popular. Like from I don't know that to be true about Aleppo, because I wasn't active in the party at the time, but we saw, like, with the BLM tweet from Joe Jorgensen, I think if no one had really said anything about that, if the one part of the party hadn't freaked out about that, I feel like no one in the country would have noticed.
No, definitely not.
No one, but like, it wouldn't have been what it was if we didn't have 30 podcasters talking about it all day, every day for like 3 weeks or more.
I agree with that. A lot of the things that you'll see with the Libertarian Party is there's a ton of infighting, and I believe that. So when one side, like Joe, who was more of a progressive libertarian through and through, but more of a progressive whenever it comes to her social views and things like that. Whenever she has a gaffe like that, it gets kind of blown out by one side. Or when you have somebody like Dave Smith who says something, then the other side kind of attacks him. And I believe that the reason for that is because we haven't won a lot of elections where you have like the Democrats, for example. You'll have Bernie Sanders and AOC just smashing out the establishment while they're campaigning and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, they're going to side up with them because that's the winning formula. We don't really have a winning formula right now. So it also, it's literally like herding cats. You're asking a group of people who believe in aggressive individualism to put that aside for the greater good. Sounds like some commie shit to me, but yeah. So I think that we do a lot of it to ourselves, like you said. There's also, there are a lot of controversial figures within the party that feed off of that. I was at a convention one time and I heard somebody say that it was like a room full of Milo Yiannopoulos, which is the most accurate description I've ever heard.
Yeah, there are definitely people that have latched onto the party and the movement, and are not doing great things for our publicity and how people think about us. I think what I'm really starting to or what I don't understand is the people that will look at somebody like a Dave Smith and say, oh, he's terrible. Libertarians are terrible. I'm going to go vote Democrat now.
Oh yeah, we very recently had that happen. Even here in Oklahoma, the Biden Libertarians for Biden group, was a couple of people in Oklahoma that didn't like that right-leaning viewpoint that was kind of becoming prominent. But I think that whenever you look at groups like that and people that say like, well, Dave Smith said some mean things about whatever, so I'm going to vote for the Democrat or the Republican, they were really looking for an excuse to do that. I came out a lot on Twitter and Facebook after the Joe Jorgensen BLM thing and was like, hey, look, like if that's your reason for not voting for her, then you were already looking for a reason. Like you're going to say this one thing is the thing that's going to make you not vote for her when we have 50 things that your candidate is doing that is very not libertarian,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people, especially when you see those, I think it happens more with Republicans than Democrats, because becoming a libertarian after being a Democrat is like, that's shameful, but you get a lot of Republicans who are Liberty Republicans or little L Republicans, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think a lot of them actually just say that they're libertarians because it sounds edgy. They're like the emo edgelords of the political world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely I'm not like other girls kind of a mentality
Yeah.
when it comes
that's exactly,
to that. It's like,
that's
oh,
exactly
I'm not a dirty little conservative. I'm a libertarian. So like,
yeah.
but no,
Yeah.
you're not. And I do believe in like small L libertarianism, obviously. And there's a spectrum of libertarianism, and not everyone is a libertarian right away. When I joined the party, I only cared about guns and drugs. Like those were my only two issues.
Yeah.
Now I'm like open borders and all this other crazy shit, But it was literally just weed and the Second Amendment. Was the Libertarian Party was the only party that agreed with me on both of them. So Gary Johnson, and I voted for him, and then got sucked into this web of insanity that is the Libertarian Party over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and it's never ending. There's always something going on with the libertarians. Every day you'll see. I made the post the other day about, I think we're like Sisyphus. We're just bound every day. We're gonna have Dave Smith and Archie Flower fighting on Twitter all day, every day for forever. That's just that's kind of our plight that we've all signed up for.
Yeah, I had a tweet. It was funny. So I tweeted out in defense of both of those people, and in the replies got shat on by both of those people, and it was quite hilarious. Because what I said was something, I don't remember the exact wording, but it's something along the lines of, if people would take the energy they spend harassing Dave Smith and Archie Flowers and put it into actually growing the liberty movement, we might already be winning elections.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
well,
the sheer amount of time and energy that people put in to harassing Archie Flowers on Twitter and photoshopping him into things and making memes about him. Like, if they put all of that energy into making memes about liberty and about like Joe Jorgensen's campaign, we could have gotten an extra like 500,000 votes.
Oh yeah, easily. But the one thing that I have noticed a lot is, it's part of my campaign slogan. Libertarians, we've been winning arguments and losing elections for 50 years. I think that we are more focused on proving that we're the most libertarian to ever libertarian than actually spreading those libertarian values.
Right.
And
I think it's a logical fallacy, because there's no such thing as the most libertarian to ever libertarian. Like, it's, everyone has their own idea of what that perfect libertarian is. Nobody agrees on it, and that argument's never going to end. Like, you are never going to actually prove that you're the greatest libertarian. So just stop, man.
Like, we had a funny little anecdote about that. So the OKLP we have like a private Discord where we kind of discuss everything. Erin Adams, she's a former chair. She's a LNC Region 7 alternate, like has done a lot of work, mentored a lot of people and she's in this Discord, and she's talking about her kids being in this public school and how she doesn't like them. And we have this guy who just joined, been a libertarian for 5 minutes, and he's like, "That's not very libertarian of you to have your kids in a public school." And it's like, and then he gets into this deal about how he's the most libertarian because his kids are in private school and et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like, man, like this is really what we're wasting our time on. This is like 45 minutes, man. You could have knocked on 20 doors by now. And, but I think that what we see a lot of is it's a very exclusive club. People are very tribal, and they want their club to be the most exclusive one that there is. I think that that's why you've seen, it started with Mike Shipley and his bottom unity message whenever he was running for chair, and now it's extended into the Unity Coalition, which you're a huge part of, and all of that. You see the hate for that. It's a Mises ploy, or it's a Macno anarcho-communist ploy to take over. There's a lot of people that don't really like unity. They want to be the most libertarian. They want to prove that they're in the most exclusive tiny club ever. And, that's why you have so many different categories within being a libertarian. If you see Democrats and Republicans, it's like, well, what are you? Well, I'm a Democrat or a Republican. It's like, if you're a libertarian, well, what kind of libertarian are you? Are you a anarcho-socialist? Are you a ANCOM? Are you a minarchist? Are you a paleo-conservative? All these different things. Everybody wants to be in the most exclusive club. And I think that's been something that's been very detrimental to our party and our movement, is that exclusivity that everybody's seeking to be the most special snowflake.
I was like, I was so with you, and that the most special snowflake. It's definitely a really big problem. That's been, I've only been in the party for 5 years, but I'm assuming it's been a problem pretty much since its inception, because it hasn't gone away in 50 years. But this idea of wanting to, it's not a club. The Libertarian Party is not a club. This isn't a social club. This isn't an exclusive anything. That's not the point. The point is 80% of Americans are libertarians, and we just need to fucking wake them up to that fact so they vote that way.
Yeah. 100%. You see a lot of people that hold these libertarian values. They just don't know what they are, because our messaging is I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's definitely not productive. One argument that I've made a lot of, is I think we underutilize how marketable we are to progressives in the left. Because if you look at most younger kids, they vote based on social issues. They're very, very socially progressive. And they get into, well, if I think Mexicans are people and, gay people should be able to get married, then I guess I'm a Democrat. And if I'm a Democrat, then I have to buy into this socialism, or this idea of Marxism, because they've done a really good job of marketing to that. Whereas if we were marketing ourselves more towards saying like, hey, we supported gay marriage 40 years before Hillary Clinton did. We are the most progressive party out there when it comes to these social issues. So you don't have to be a socialist. You don't have to blame all these things on capitalism. You can actually be here. This is the alternative. And I think that we miss a lot of people with that. And we also miss it because we focus on slogans. We have the taxation is theft, fuck them hoe-ass roads, all that stuff. And those are funny to say, or whatever. But to the most people, they don't mean anything. They're just banter that doesn't. And then instead of saying like, hey, you're actually a libertarian because you believe in these things, we argue with them about how wrong they are in the views that we don't agree with them on. We have to be the smartest person in the room. And I think it's very unproductive.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we way too often try to pick out fights with people. Like you said, we're really good at arguing. Like as a movement, as a group of people, we're all pretty decent intellectuals. I won't say all. Majority of us are decent intellectuals and decent at arguing. So we're good at it, and it's what we like to do. I'm included here. Like I fucking love to debate people. So Twitter is a problem for me because I want to argue with people. Like I want to, because it's fun for me and I feel like I'm good at it and I want to keep it going. But then we have to do this unity thing. And so I have to keep stopping myself. But it's really easy to look at somebody and go, okay, you are a libertarian. They're 90% of everything that you believe lines up with everything that I believe. Why are we focusing on that 10%?
Right. But the 10%, you know, that's the 10% that makes you a libertarian, or whatever it is, whatever that excuse is. I think that's been something that I've got into quite a few Twitter debate. I don't Twitter debate as much as I used to, just because it's so exhausting. But I mean, I've got into it with quite a bit of people, you know, and sometimes the other side of that is sometimes people just want to argue. You know, you're not ever going to sway them over to your side. It doesn't matter how persuasive or how good of a debater you are. They just want to argue, you know. More people are focused on being right than being good.
Yeah, that is definitely a huge problem that I see on Twitter. And I try to like suss that out as quickly as I can if I'm interacting with somebody. I'll give Archie a shout out here because he's very good at, in the middle of a conversation, like clarifying and like reverting back to the original point and like being upfront with people and asking questions like, are we trying to come to a consensus here or are we just arguing? Because if we're just arguing, I don't want a part of that. Have a good night. And Archie and I, like, and he's had to do that to me a couple of times. There's been more than one time where mid-argument, he's just like, all right, dude, have a good night. We're not having a real discourse here, so I don't want a part of this. And he was completely right. I was being an asshole. So I got to give him credit for being really good at like just putting an end to these arguments that started out good and then got personal or got annoying or something like that. He's good at making sure that those arguments don't continue into that gray area of hatred and spewing things that you don't actually want to say to people.
Oh yeah, no, that's another thing that we've got to get better at. Spike Cohen is really good at it too. You know, he has that, I can't remember the whole thing, but he's basically like, whenever you're talking to somebody, just assume that they're a loved one and you're trying to explain this to them instead of just some random person behind a computer screen that you're going to hurl hate at. You know, like, I used to believe that if I didn't get called a Nazi and a commie in the same day, it was an unsuccessful day on my part and my position that I was in for liberty. So now I only get called a commie every now and again, but it's, you know, I don't engage people as much as I used to in arguments. It's more about, you know, trying to keep things civil, bringing levity. One thing that I'll do a lot is like crack a joke in the middle of one of those, and it just kind of brings the tension down a little bit. And some people don't have that ability, obviously. Some people are you know, they're more intellectual than I am, and they want the debate because they believe that that's the way that they can sway that person. But I haven't had very much luck in that. So I think that
anybody that says that you can't joke in the middle of a debate isn't actually trained in debating and hasn't actually studied it, because like every good debater or author throughout all of history was funny. So
yeah,
like,
and you've got to be.
This isn't the place for a joke. No, it's completely a place for a joke.
Yeah, I got into it. I was in a debate about open borders here very recently and misspelled border a couple of times in the tweet. And then I made a joke about it and not being able to edit it, you know, and then this person's like, I can't believe you crack a joke in such a dire situation. And I was like, a dire situation? Like, you live in Florida and I live in Oklahoma, and neither of us are elected officials on a national level. Like, what are we actually going to bring to the border debate when it comes to everyday Americans? Like, this is not a dire situation at all. And if it is one, there's nothing that you and I can do about it right now. So, like, let's just have some fun with it. So, yeah, making things fun like that is always a lot better, especially for the person on the other side. Because one thing that you'll notice is if libertarians are the worst about it, but they will quote tweet somebody that they're arguing with just to get the gang in. Like, the gang is coming, you know, and it's just a shit show at that point. I mean, people just go off on one another. And so those people feel personally attacked. And then if you calm it down and are like, hey, look, like, we're both people, you know, like, let's just talk this out. It's a lot better. You get a lot more success in that. They may not like your viewpoints, but they will at least they at least like you. You know, I recently got into a good friend of mine on Twitter now. He does he's a hardcore Democrat, and he's actually printing mailers and shirts and stuff for my campaign for chair. And the way that he and I started was I made a post talking about us being able to market to progressives more. And he tweets me and he says, "A libertarian? Ooh." That was how our whole conversation began. And then we ended up talking over the next couple of days, and now we're friends, and he's helping me do this. He's still a hardcore Democrat. And haven't changed that, but he and I have a good understanding, you know, and he's helped me with some of my messaging and stuff like that. It's a good relationship. And so you can have that, because the fact of the matter is that we're not going to take over the government tomorrow, and we're going to need people like that in order to work on the things that we agree on. And if they don't like you, they're not going to work with you.
Yep. 100%. We seem to be okay with alien, or I don't want to make generalizations again, because I call people out for that too often. But I see people being okay with turning people away to libertarianism by just like, oh, well, they were a statist, and so I can call them a statist, and they weren't a libertarian anyway, so we didn't lose a libertarian. And I'm like, I get that logic if we were a competitive party that was winning national elections consistently. You know, when we make up 1% of the population, we can't be like, oh, you 99%, fuck you, because you're not part of us. We don't need you, because then we stay a 1% party.
Yeah, and you know, that comes back to the
tech happens.
That was me. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and dropped internet, so I had to switch over to cell. So
totally understandable. Montana it's not known for its great robust like cell service. It's not.
It's definitely not. Nor its Wi-Fi. So it just kicked me out. I'm here out in front of the office, and so it just kicked me out. Apologize for that. Anyways, what we were talking about, that exclusivity, it just goes back to the, you know, everybody wants it to be more exclusive. I got into a pretty heated debate whenever I was vice chair, and basically just told the group that, you know, you guys run this kind of like a fraternity. It's not really like a political party. It's, you know, all about being the most exclusive and all of that. And that was probably not one of my prouder moments, but I was so frustrated with it. And I think that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You see it a lot, even like with the Archie Flower, the Dave Smith, you know, the anti-Mises caucus versus the Mises caucus, and all of these things. You know, everybody wants it to be super, super exclusive, and I think that's detrimental to us.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I sent out a tweet a while back, and it's mostly been useful. I will quote tweet myself into the replies of a bunch of other tweets with this one. It's almost the only thing that I use it for. But I just said, imagine thinking you can't start recruiting more libertarians until a few specific people you don't like are gone.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that a couple of times.
Yeah, because I just put that in the replies to any tweet that I think deserves it, because any tweet that I see where it's like, oh, we could do so many great things if there weren't all these lolberts like Archie ruining the party, and then, you know, I see the same thing that like, oh, I really wish I could recruit my friends, but they all think we're racists because Dave Smith, and I'm like, they all think we're racist because you call Dave Smith a racist all day. Like,
yeah,
that's on you.
Yeah, and you know, everybody's guilty of that. Even I'm guilty of that. I used to, I was not a Dave Smith fan for a while, and until I actually got like knew him, you know, or met him. I don't know him personally, but met him and like have had conversations with him and stuff. And so everybody's guilty of that, you know. even somebody like you or I, who is very big on the unity, very big on all of that stuff, we're all guilty of it. And I understand the point of it. You know, you don't want people to associate your movement with something that you're not, you know.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's a huge spectrum. There's so many different types of libertarians and different viewpoints and everything like that. And that's what makes the Libertarian Party so beautiful, is since we are a group of individualists, you're allowed to have your own individual viewpoint. You don't have to be part of the groupthink.
Yeah. I think there's a pretty good solution to the their diluting libertarianism kind of conversation, because I do agree that I have a problem with people saying that, you know, border control is a libertarian ideal, because it's not, right? However,
Right.
I don't have a problem with you being a libertarian and being pro-borders. Just
Right.
don't say that being pro-borders is part of libertarianism. Admit that, like everybody else, you only agree with the platform 90%, because I don't know anybody that agrees with the platform 100%. And then you can talk about that 10% where you disagree. Just be honest about the fact that that's not what the platform says. And if you're doing it like that, the other side can't come at you and say that you're ruining libertarianism, because you're not. You're explaining your point of view and then preaching the other 90% of the LP platform.
Right.
And it's fine.
No, it's fine. You just people need to be very honest about, like, hey, this is where I deviate from the platform on this and this and this, you know. I hate it when people argue in absolutes, you know, like this is the only libertarian viewpoint, et cetera, et cetera. I've gotten into it with people and get called a libsock and a commie for saying, like, hey, you know, in a libertarian society, if somebody wanted to have a commune, it's not gonna matter. So, like, why are we battling with these libsocks? Like, what is the big deal? And they're like, well, you know, they don't believe in private property. And it's like, okay, well, I believe in private property so much that I think if they want to give up their own private property, then they can.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the counter to that is to just say, like, hey, if you believe in individualism as much as you say you do, being a part of the Libertarian Party, then you have to agree with people to being able to make decisions that you don't agree with.
Yeah. My absolute favorite debate to get into, because almost every person on that bottom like level of the political quadrant map thing will engage in this argument with me. And that is on the topic of Ancapistan cannot exist without Ann Compton and vice versa.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't.
Both sides will argue tooth and nail with me that their way is right. And it's just a blatant oxymoron. Like, if you are an anarchist that wants to force other people into being your type of anarchist, you're not an anarchist.
Right. I mean, it's super counterintuitive, like you said. I mean, people need to engage in those debates. And one thing that we really, like, I had a tweet here not too long ago that got me a bunch of hateful DMs, was I said, you know, you need to be just as educated about Macno and Marx as you are about Mises and Hayek.
Yep.
And people just lost their minds about it. Like, and it's like, well, if you don't understand the other side, then you're not going to be any good at a debate. And also, you will never understand where somebody's coming from if you don't understand the material that they're basing their beliefs on.
Exactly. It goes back to that fuck the 99% mentality of you know, if they believe Marx, they're not even worth talking to. So why would I care about understanding where they're coming from? And it's like, no,
right.
You need to talk to them because those are voters. Like, if they cast a ballot in November, they're part of the mission. Like, I don't give a fuck what they believe right now. We all believed some dumb shit before we were libertarians.
Yeah. I mean, but you have to know, and you have to know, and you have to be able to steer them back towards, this is I see where you're coming from. However, this is the libertarian solution for that. I recently had a voter in the OKLP reach out to me, and she says, I'm not a very good libertarian because I'm very supportive of environmental rights and all of these things. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make you any less of a libertarian, and she's like, well, I just think that some corporations can be evil, and that, if we just let them go unchecked, then they're gonna pollute the environment, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, hey, look, in reality, if you look at studies, if you look at any root cause analysis for any environmental spill, it almost always comes back to government intervention. Whereas if the private industry was allowed to regulate themselves that way, then it wouldn't have happened. A really great example is Deepwater Horizon. The Deepwater Horizon rig, when it blew up, BP took a lot of flack for these things that weren't in check. But the thing that very few people speak about is they were in check by the OSHA standard, which is all they're held to. Now, if they were held to the IDC standard or the IPAA standard, that's the private industry standard, none of these things would have happened. However, because the government has said, hey, here's your floor, this is the bare minimum that you got to do, that's what they're going to do. Whereas if they had to be regulated by the private industry, we wouldn't have these things. And that occurs in most of these environmental spills. And so I just sent her some articles, sent her some paperwork, and was like, hey, I understand your viewpoint. However, I want you to look into this and get back with me, because the private industry could regulate itself better. Another good example is when it comes to carbon tax and your carbon footprint and things like that. If you look at carbon capture technology, the largest investors and the largest carbon capture project that we currently have is located in Midland, Texas, and it's funded exclusively by ExxonMobil, who's the big bad oil industry that's totally destroying the world and all of this. However, they're the ones that recognize that the market wants greener solutions, and they're the ones that are going to invest in that because people want to make money. At the end of the day, we all want to drive Benz, we all want to have Rolls, all that stuff. And so if the solution is to be more green, then that's what's going to happen. Greed is good, and free market solutions work. You just have to show people that, hey, most of these things that you're blaming on the free market aren't the free market.
Right. Yeah, and I think you said something a little bit in her statement of I think some corporations can be evil or something like that, and that's not an anti-libertarian point of view. That's facts. That's just reality. Some corporations are evil. Have you heard of Disney? Like some corporations are just pure to the bone, protect pedophiles, send kids to islands, evil, and we still give them billions of dollars. So yes, that's not anti-libertarian to think that there's corporations out there that might need a rap on the knuckles or something, but to think that a government is the only solution, or be permanent government solutions, those are where you start to go wrong, in my opinion. There's private industries, there's actual laws. If we just held people accountable to the laws that are already in place, most of Disney's executives would already be in jail, along with 90% of our congressional representation.
100%. But most of them get away with things because of government protections. Right.
And it kind of makes the argument for more regulation a little shaky.
It does. However, I think that whenever something that we need to keep in mind whenever we talk about, government isn't the solution and all these things, we need to, because I see a lot of people that are just like, well, you're just stupid. You don't understand that the government is the reason for this. When in reality, I call it dinosaur politics. These people have really big hearts and really small brains. Okay. They're looking for, just like dinosaurs, they're looking for solutions, and they're coming from a good place. They just don't understand. And so if you can do a good job of educating them without insulting them, then you can kind of turn that tide back. And you're not going to win everybody. Some people are always going to believe that the government is the solution, and it's not a bad thing on their part. It doesn't make them evil or stupid. They're just uneducated, or they're ignorant of the actual situation. And we just have to do a better job of the messaging and being more compassionate in our messaging whenever we're talking to these people. Because like you said, evil corporations do exist. Evil people exist. And so as long as evil is there, it's going to be everywhere. There are evil people in the government. There are great people in the government. There are evil people in corporations. There's wonderful people in corporations. And this idea that because somebody is wealthy or rich or a corporation is successful, they're automatically evil is it's one, it's counterintuitive, but two, it's something that like most people believe, and we as a group need to do a better job of messaging whenever it comes to that and saying, hey, you know what, actually, like, some people can be successful, some corporations can be successful while being good, and these are the things, because all business is driven by there's a problem and you have a solution.
Yeah. I was talking last night, actually. I almost brought this conversation up earlier because I was having a conversation with a girl who I'm talking to, and we decided that we didn't know how the other person handled like criticism or disagreements because we hadn't found something to argue about yet. Like, we've been talking for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now, and we haven't really argued about anything yet. So we were like going down through the things to like find something to argue about. I asked her how she felt about Star Wars, like sausage versus bacon. Like, we were trying to find things to argue about, and we couldn't until we got to guns. That was where finally there was a little bit of a disagreement. But even that, she ended up saying, I will read this text because it's too beautiful not to. Because it's perfect libertarianism, because she's not a libertarian. She's brand new to the idea, came in through like the Unity 2020 ticket, like the Gabbard Crenshaw thing, and is just getting introduced to libertarianism. But she said, I really have trouble caring what people want to do or own as long as they're not hurting somebody. And I was like, welcome to the Libertarian Party, my friend.
Right?
Like, you just described the entire basis of our belief right there.
I mean, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the whole thing, and so it makes it, when you put things like that, it makes it hard to argue against it. And most people, like we said earlier, are libertarian. They just don't know it because we're not doing a good job of like, hey, this is our actual messaging. This is what we actually believe. We do a really good job of telling people how they're not libertarian.
Yep.
And
all right, go ahead.
Yeah, and also hats off to you for trying to work out some conflict resolution at the beginning of a relationship. That's a big thing.
Because we were discussing because we were discussing an argument that I was having last night with a good friend of mine. Lasted literally the entire night, and we were having like a really healthy conversation about it. And I asked, why are you so chill? Like, what? And I meant that as a real question, because I wanted an answer. I wanted to know like what made her like step out from the normal, like plugged into the matrix bullshit humanity that we interact with all day and be like a normal human or a good human that's like understanding and reasonable and like can talk to people. But she just disagreed with me that she was chill. And I was like, well, I guess we wouldn't know because we haven't disagreed yet. So
right. But that's
we tried and it didn't work.
Yeah, that's a thing that most people struggle with, though. Very few people, everybody kind of thinks that they're bad secretly. You don't really see that until you're in a relationship with somebody, but everybody thinks that they're bad or they're toxic and they have all these things that are wrong with them. So hats off to that for trying to work that out at the beginning. That's a healthy relationship. And that's the way to be with more people.
Mm-hmm. I'm not putting any of my eggs in any baskets as far as relationships go with the world the way that it is, and every girl that I've even like slightly cared about being like on the other fucking side of the country or the globe at different points in time. But this one looks like it might be going in a good direction. I don't know. we'll see.
Good. I hope it works out.
Me too. I definitely. I've been having this argument a lot lately because one of my very good friends is, part of the like men go their own way, red pill like movement of almost hating women. Like there's a fine line that most of these guys claim to have not crossed, but it's untrue. And so, I'm never going to get married, never going to have kids kind of mentalities of, because all women are just out to screw you over, and getting married is just there's no way that could be a good idea, because women are going to, because then they're going to divorce you and take all your money. Like that's the only way that marriage can end, is by the man getting fucked over by the woman. And I'm like, yeah, that's not true. It's just blatantly not true.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not true. I can tell you with 100% certainty that 99% of my relationships, the problem was me.
Same.
So, yeah, I mean, for real. So, and that takes a lot of introspective to say, like, hey, like, I'm the one that was the problem and things like that,
Yeah.
So
yeah, they like to throw up the statistic of the fact that it's like 83% of all divorces are initiated by the women. And like, it's a cool stat. I'm like not going to disagree with it, obviously, but in my opinion, it doesn't prove anything at all about the conversation of like how women treat men and men treat women. Like the fact that women are more likely to be the one to go get the paperwork, in my opinion, doesn't even have a bearing on this conversation, because you don't know what caused her to go get that paperwork. You're assuming that she just found some other dick or something like that and went, I'm not happy anymore, and getting a divorce. Maybe he was beating her, maybe he was cheating on her. Maybe, you don't know. Maybe it was a mutual thing, but she was just the one that actually, because somebody has to initiate it. Like one of the two has to be the one on the top of the stuff. So, I don't think that really makes a difference. And to blame women for societal systemic problems doesn't make any sense to me either, because up until 100 years ago, they had no power to fix anything. So like the fact that the criminal justice system is rigged against men, we did it. We built that. Men built the criminal justice system that rigged itself against us. I don't know how, but we did that.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. So, but just like with libertarianism, just like with everything else in life, you have to take a look and say, like, hey, am I the problem? Am I the one that's not properly communicating? Am I the one that's doing the bad things? But that's a conversation that most people don't want to have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I didn't have with myself for quite some time. I went through 2 very long-term relationships where I went into the second one without really coming to terms with the reason that the first one was shit, and did the exact same thing in 2 different, like almost 2-year-long relationships. And finally, after doing the same thing and ruining 2 really good relationships twice, finally was like, hey, maybe I'm a little bit clingy. Maybe I'm a possessive piece of shit human that manipulates and tries to control the women that they're with, and they run away as soon as they can.
Yeah.
I should probably stop doing that.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I'm the same way. I mean, without getting into too much details, I've been kind of a dirtbag in a lot of relationships, kind of a piece of shit, and just very recently came to terms with that, and I'm working on that, and that's something that a lot more people could stand to do. Is those things. I can tell you with 100% certainty that my last couple of relationships, especially my most recent one, was my fault. I'm the one that fucked it up, and it was my toxic behavior and my controlling and my manipulative, my everything that caused it to happen. And once you have that conversation with yourself and you start seeking help and doing things like that's when you can really maybe have a healthy relationship. It just sucks that the way to find that out is to have some shitty ones.
Right. What I think is the biggest like thing that I can look at and say that I've improved and changed just the way that I look at relationships in general is because the last, I'll call it a relationship, it was a couple of months and we were mostly long distance during it, but we were never like official.
Yeah.
That one wasn't me. I wasn't perfect, obviously, but I broke up with her because she wasn't the one. Like, there was too many red flags and a couple too many fights that I didn't want to continue to have for the next 50 years of my life. And I was like, okay, I'm good. Have a nice life.
Yeah.
And the ability to do that is something that I've never had in my entire life. And what's drawn me to be a terrible person and be terrible in relationships is I've always been like super terrified of being single. And like trying to rebuild a new relationship from scratch after I've already put a year into it, that kind of stuff was just daunting forever. And so I always like stuck it out and tried to make it work and put in a whole nother year into a relationship that I should have left. So it's nice that, you know, I've worked on myself to the point where I'm comfortable being single. And that is a huge improvement compared to where I was like a year and a half ago. She went after me. The biggest red flag, which is super like libertarian gatekeeping bullshit. The actual biggest red flag was the way that she handled the argument about abolish the FDA. I said abolish the FDA, and she went after me for about 2 hours, and we debated it pretty hard. And just the way that whole conversation went, I was like, I'm worried where this conversation is going to go when I say like abolish the actual federal government, because that's what I really believe, right? Like, this isn't going to go well. If you think that I'm actually a bad person, because she was starting to launch actual personal attacks in the middle of this conversation. You think that I'm a bad person and trying to poison people because I want to abolish the FDA, we're probably shouldn't get married or like continue this. Like, it's not going to work out well.
No, and you know, that's healthy to realize that it's not early on. So hats off to you for trying to work through some conflict resolution now. I think that's really good. More people should do that. I wish that I would have done that and figured out that the way that I fight is just terrible and I'm just a fucking monster whenever I get into arguments especially with somebody that I'm dating. And you know, it took me a long time to realize that, up until very recently. So hats off to you on that one. But listen, I'm an hour in, and that's really all the time that I got.
No worries. I appreciate you very much for coming on, and I hope to have you on again. And I'm looking forward to tonight.
Let's do that again.
Watching, we're doing the reverse later on today, so definitely when you're done watching this, go watch that.
Yeah, sounds great, man.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you back next time.
Hey fighters, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos. If you want to learn more or get involved, go to fightforliberty.com/join or reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Fight for Liberty. If you want to help keep the show going, Patreon and Cash App are the way to do that. We'll catch you back here next time. Until then, keep up the fight.